on to, because we are a little short on time. These are some writing samples that the kids have written this year after having TPRS for the year. The Spanish 3 essays are from the midterm, and the Spanish 1 essays are essays that were just written from information that was given to them. Why TPRS? The first thing was because I realized what was happening to my traditionally taught students. Even on back to school night, I had parents tell me, oh, I took 4 years of French, can't speak a word. And I didn't want my students to walk out of my classroom saying that. Not that they couldn't say a few things, but they weren't talking. And I really thought about what my new goal was. I want them to talk. I want them to be able to speak, to be fluent. Even if they make mistakes, I want them to be able to talk. Why keep, oh, that did something different than mine. Okay. Stephen Krashen, I'm sure you've all heard of him. I know we watched a video back when Laura was here with Stephen Krashen. Stephen Krashen is a professor of language acquisition, and his theory is based on the acquisition that we have when we're children. As children, we listen to language for 6 years, 5 years, and all we do is take it all in, and then eventually we start sending it out. But we're sucking it all in for all that time, and then eventually we speak. It's not the other way around, and many times in traditional language classes, we tend to give, but they haven't had enough time to be able to assimilate what we've given them, so they really can't produce anything with it. TPRS, the basis is fluency first, accuracy second. And I know that flies in the face of what a lot of teachers think, but the idea is to get them fluent in speaking, and then eventually the grammar will come later. If they're using the structure, they'll be able to understand what the grammatical part is behind it. Blaine Gray actually said something that sounded very silly. Students can't really be taught the grammar until they've already learned the grammar. And it made no sense at first, but when you see how a TPR lesson is taught, they're using it, hearing it, repeating it, salute. Then they're able to understand what the grammar is all about. One of the conferences I went to, the professor put up a picture of a bicycle with all these parts and said, you can look at a bicycle and memorize every word on here. I didn't even know what half of this stuff was. But until you get on the bicycle and you start riding, there's no way to know how to ride a bicycle. Very difficult. And I really thought it was a great analogy. Because in foreign language, until you start using the language, you really don't know how to use it. You can conjugate verbs till you're blue in the face, but not be able to speak. So I thought that was a great analogy. Back to language acquisition for a moment. Babies versus students. If you take 10 hours a day times 6 years, babies hear us for about 20,000 hours. Tie your shoes, pick up your toys, drink your juice, eat your vegetables. Why didn't you eat your vegetables? Let's tie your shoes. Oh, let's look for your shoes. Over and over and over again. If we're lucky, and with the school year we've had this year with the snow days, 150 hours is probably well above what we would have if they take a language with us for 4 years, and we know that that's not the case for all students. We get them for 600 hours. Not a lot of time. When you put those two together, you look at those two statistics, it's kind of frightening. So you have to make the most of what you have.
They consider a year 108 hours.
That's 108. This came from another statistic, maybe in another, probably another part of the country where they have a little more schools.
Yes, because for the summer academies, you have to
Oh,
have
okay,
108
yeah,
hours to
right.
get credit.
Okay. So even if we have a little bit more than that, it's really not a lot of time. So we got to make the most of what we do. Fluency is what I like to focus on now. I'm really trying to get them to speak. I was really excited today. I was observed this morning, and when Brian Lynn walked out of the room, he actually stopped and talked to the kids and told them how well they spoke. And that they spoke in Spanish the whole period. He was just very, very excited about that they could do that. Comprehensible input is the key. You can speak Spanish for 41 minutes in your classroom if you're teaching what they understand. And if you're talking with words that they know, they'll understand you. And every time they hear it, they understand it more. That means you need to repeat the high frequency vocabulary. And I know I spoke to you earlier this year about the frequency dictionary. That tells you, if you look at the first 300 words, they're very basic vocabulary words. And when you look at some of the vocabulary words in our textbook, if you saw how far down the frequency list some of those words are, you'd never teach them because they're not needed at this point. They can look them up. So that's kind of the basis of TPR. Here's how I start to plan my lessons. I start with vocabulary and grammar. I decide what it is I want to do. Right now we're working on food vocabulary. We've done restaurant and ordering and that, but now we're just kind of zeroing in on that. And I'm taking an opportunity to bring in the quinceañera because it was something I started to talk about, and a lot of them looked at me like I was crazy. That doesn't mean you didn't teach it. It just means it didn't sink into them, obviously. What's the focus going to be? The other point behind TPRS is that you don't shelter grammar. If you need an indirect object pronoun, use it. I've been using les da, les dice, les trae, les sirve all year. And they use it. They used it this morning in front of Brian. I was like, thank you, God. You know, you actually remember that. Introduce the new vocabulary first through TPR. And that's a great way to do because there's so much fun things you can do with the TPR. When I did fruit and vegetables, I brought them with me and I had them passed around. I had already taught them to the right, to the left, forward, back. So it gave me an opportunity to practice all of those as well. Then I also practiced through PQA, personal question to answer. Basically, you know, oh, Julie has a black bag. Oh, do you like your black bag? Who else has a black bag? Oh, no, Steve. Oh, Steve's got a black bag. Okay, Steve, where did you buy your black bag? Based on the vocabulary that they know how to use. But obviously, black bag is where I was headed, especially getting bolsa negra, getting the noun and adjective in the right order. Then you do the ask a story. The ask a story is basically using the vocabulary and the structures that you want them to learn within the context of a story. And in just a moment, I'll give you an example of one of the stories. Close activities. Those are very helpful in TPRS because they've heard the story over and over and over again. Then finally, they see part of it with blanks. And most times, they can fill in the blanks even without a word bank, which is amazing. Sometimes I give them one, and then they feel like they got a big present. Story retells. I'll actually stop along the way after 3 or 4 details and say, okay, take a moment, turn to your partner, tell your partner the details of the story. Sometimes I'll have a storyboard that I'll throw up that might have a stick figure of a boy, a stick figure of a girl, a map of Madrid, and then they have to come up with, hay un chico, el chico se llama Pepe, Pepe vive en Madrid, hay una chica, la chica se llama, and they can go back and forth. And then I'll ask for volunteers to come up and do it. And some students don't feel comfortable doing it in Spanish, let them do it in English, just to see if they got the details, because that's what you want to see if they're understanding it. Question and answer, obviously. In my room on the left-hand side, I have all of the question words in huge black letters. They are never covered except for midterms. I didn't cover them for any exam because they don't know them yet. They're still learning them. So let them have them. It helps them. Once they see the question word, that's usually the key to letting them do it. Vocabulary quizzes, basically they're English or Spanish to English, just basic recognition. Sometimes I'll throw them a closed quiz. Extended readings. I'll take the story that we did, make it a little longer, throw in lots of extra details, give them each a story. They read to each other in class, and we do what's called volleyball translation. Now they've had the story, they've heard the story, they've read the story. So now they read a sentence, their partner translates it, reads the next one, and then they just go back and forth, like popping a volleyball back and forth. It's amazing what they remember. And I usually give them a couple of minutes, and I'll have them switch partners so that they get to talk to many different people in the room. And then finally, there's an exam. Not a traditional exam. It's not a grammar-based exam. They're not conjugating verbs. They're not doing structures. They're basically a lot of questions. There will be a closed activity. And then there are extra questions that are related to the story, but the answers aren't in the story. Why did Jake continue to live in a box? Where did Helen and Jake go to dinner? Why? Lots of extra where they have to now give their opinion. With the 3s, I've been able to do much more of that than I did with the 1s. Little by little now, the 1s are getting better at the 4K questions. It's just taking them a while. So that's kind of my basic lesson layout. Stories can last anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks, depending on how I stretch it out. I'm also including, I'm doing geography with them still, filling in all the holes like we all are with the 1s and 2s, filling in numbers and extra vocab a little along the way, so I don't do the story the whole period. This was one of my stories, El Vampiro va de compras. And so this is how I would start and ask a story. You as the class are sitting, and all I ask of you is that you respond to me somehow. Show me some emotion. When I tell you something, it could be, oh, see? Some sort of response to me so that I know you're listening. Because if if I don't see your mouth move or your ears pop up or your eyes, then I'm going to say, I'll come back right at you and repeat something to get a response from you. So that's the first step. So here's the beginning of the story. Hay un vampiro mexicano. Oh, sí, hay un vampiro mexicano. Clase, ¿hay un vampiro mexicano? Sí, hay un vampiro mexicano. Clase, ¿hay un vampiro mexicano o hay una jirafa mexicana? Un vampiro mexicano, es verdad, hay un vampiro mexicano. Clase, ¿hay un vampiro americano? No, no hay un vampiro americano, hay un vampiro mexicano, exacto. Mónica, ¿qué hay?
Hay un vampiro mexicano.
Es verdad, sí, hay un vampiro mexicano. Ahora, clase, ¿cómo se llama el vampiro mexicano?
José.
Se llama Drácula.
No, se llama Fuzzy. Sí, el vampiro mexicano se llama Fuzzy. Oh, sí, el vampiro mexicano se llama Fuzzy. El vampiro mexicano se llama Fuzzy? Sí, el vampiro mexicano se llama Fuzzy. ¿El vampiro mexicano se llama Steve? No, el vampiro mexicano no se llama Steve. El vampiro mexicano se llama Fuzzy. ¿El vampiro mexicano se llama Julie o se llama Fuzzy? Se llama Fuzzy. El vampiro mexicano se llama Fuzzy. Clase, ¿qué hay?
Hay un vampiro mexicano.
Sí, ¿es un vampiro puertorriqueño? No, es un vampiro mexicano, sí. ¿Y Eleanor, cómo se llama el vampiro?
Se llama Julie.
No, no se llama Julie. ¿Cómo se llama? Se llama Fuzzy. Sí, se llama Fuzzy. El vampiro mexicano se llama Fuzzy. Eleanor, ¿cómo se llama el vampiro?
Se llama Fuzzy.
Exacto, sí, exacto. Y ahora, actor. Ahora, Fuzzy.
Oh, wow.
¿Tú eres un vampiro mexicano?
Sí, yo soy un vampiro mexicano.
Sí, tú eres un vampiro mexicano, es verdad. ¿Tú eres un vampiro mexicano o tú eres un hipopótamo mexicano?
Un vampiro mexicano. Yo soy un vampiro mexicano.
Es verdad, tú eres un vampiro mexicano. ¿Tú eres un vampiro ruso?
Aunque no, soy mexicano.
Ah, exacto, tú eres un vampiro mexicano, sí, señor. ¿Tú te llamas Fuzzy?
Sí, yo soy Fuzzy. Me
Sí.
llamo Fuzzy.
Sí, te llamas Fuzzy, sí. ¿Te llamas Fuzzy o te llamas Eva?
Fuzzy. Me llamo Fuzzy.
Sí, tú te llamas Fuzzy. ¿Tú te llamas George Bush?
No. Me llamo Fuzzy.
Oh, sí, te llamas Fuzzy, sí, clase. El vampiro mexicano se llama Fuzzy. Sí, es verdad, se llama Fuzzy, sí. Clase, ¿dónde vive Fuzzy?
En México.
Oh, no sabe.
¿Dónde vive? ¿Dónde vive Fuzzy? Usa la imaginación. ¿Dónde vive Fuzzy?
Vive en la ciudad de México.
¡En la luna! ¡Sí! Fuzzy vive en la luna, clase. Fuzzy vive en la luna. Sí, Fuzzy vive en la luna. Sí, sí.
¿Cómo sabía?
Bueno, entonces. So that gives you a little taste of what the Ask a Story is like. So after those 3 or 4 details, I would ask my students to turn to someone closer. I'd give them a partner and say, please repeat the details as you know them. Now they're narrating the story, but when I spoke to my actor, I spoke directly to him, and I asked questions. So they're hearing three different persons. They're hearing the yo from the actor, the two from me, and then the L they're hearing from me as well, because it's the narration of the story. So they're hearing conjugations, and they know the difference. Now, one of the things that I will do is on the screen, I will have not the name of the story, but I will have some vocabulary there. Words that I know are struggles for them. So if they didn't know the word vampiro, I might put it up. Vampiro being a cognate would not stay there more than a day, because once they hear it, they know what it is. But va de compras, when I would go a little bit further into the story, that's a tough phrase for a lot of kids. They don't understand it.
Are you putting English translations as
Yes.
well?
Spanish
okay.
with the English. One of the other things about TPRS is if they ask for a word, give it to them. Because chances are it's where they see it. Right. So, and also, if my actor is struggling, especially, I had a student a few months ago who was struggling with me llamo, kept getting the me llamo S, and struggling with te amo. So finally I went to the board, it wasn't on my screen, and I just wrote, me llamo, my name is. And then I said to him, te amas, whoever it was, and then I'd go like this, si me llamo, and then I kept coming back, and I would come back to that question. So you're constantly renewing and reviewing all of those questions. And if you have a student that you know struggles in your room, just watch their eyes. You will know who's struggling. You already do that, so you know. But you really can get in there. And I found that they don't mind being put on the spot because they know the answer. It's just a question of getting it in the right form when they have to answer those questions up front. I've never had trouble getting volunteers to be actors. I started a new story today, but I haven't picked the actors yet. I had students coming up at the end of class, can I be in the story? How many characters do we have? Are there girls or there boys? I'll be an animal. You know? They really, really want to be involved. So that gives you an idea of what the Ask a Story is. You can make your Ask a Story small, if you're focused on something small, or you can make it long and put it into chapters. That's what I've been doing with my Spanish 3s. We've had a story about Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo and Shaggy went to Madrid because Daphne and Fred fell in love, and they wanted to get married in Madrid. And they needed to buy gifts, so they went to the Corte Inglés. So it gave me an opportunity to talk about the cultural aspects of Madrid. They've been to the Museo del Prado, they've been to the Corte Inglés, the Parque Retiro, they've been to, I forget where else they've been. We talked about shopping at the Corte Inglés, we talked about changing euros and dollars. So they've really got a background of what things, you know, and then they picked what they wanted to buy as the wedding gift. It was a mystery van. And then the second chapter was going to the store and meeting the dependiente and going through the process of buying something and getting a receipt for something. They had to go to the bank and they met the banker. And then the last chapter, they're getting ready for the wedding. The wedding will happen in the next 2 days. So you can break it, it's up to you how you want to break it down. Key thoughts on stories. They need to be fun, interesting, and have surprising details. Now, Vampiro Mexicano, you'd expect him to be named Jose. You wouldn't expect him to be named Fuzzy. Salud. So, salud. Salud. Y salud. Y salud. Sí, salud. Exacto. So the kids have gotten to the point now where they know I'm expecting something crazy. So if I say es un vampiro mexicano, they're not going to say Jose anymore. They're going to give me something crazy. I've had Elvis, Shaniqua, Sharkeisha, you name it. They come up with some great names. They need to be memorable because you're going to remember. You're going to remember if it's crazy. You're going to remember if it's crazy. They are allowed to add details. I asked you for names and places. Those are the details that I allow them to add. And generally they need to be proper names and places. I gave it to Maureen because everybody knows what a woman is. But I wouldn't necessarily do that with my 1s. Maybe my 3s I would. They need to be comprehensible and full of vocabulary. I used very basic vocabulary, but everybody understood the story no matter what. And you need to, use that target vocabulary that you've listed, but use those top 100, 200 frequency words to make your stories. Because we remember what's interesting. We remember what's fun. I still remember the story that at the TPRS conference last summer was about a cow. And the cow wanted to rent a hotel room, but he wanted the hotel room that had the mouse in it. And I remember the German. I was blown away on Saturday when I actually remembered German when she started to talk. I was like, wow, I actually remember that. This was the technique when I asked you the story. I said a statement, hay un vampiro mexicano. Then I asked you the question, hay un vampiro mexicano? The answer is yes. Then I asked you an either or. Is he Mexican or is he Russian? Then I asked you a no question, because I want them to hear the negative construction. I'm not going to teach it to them, but they're going to hear it over and over again. What he isn't, and then always repeat what he is. Always come back to the right information, because you want them to have the right story. And that's basically what the Ask a Story technique is. Later on, as the details get longer and longer, I mix the questions up. I don't always do it in the same order, because they'll get smart. They start to realize that now it's a no question, now it's an either or. So you can mix them up. And then eventually use the question words, little by little, as you add details. This is a really great, it's hard to see up here, and I know it's a little on your packet. This is the number of questions asked in a TPRS classroom as opposed to a traditional classroom. And the number of repetitions. I forgot I was a smart boy. So you can see that in a regular classroom, the number of repetitions is going to be a lot smaller. How many times did I say the word vampiro? If you counted, it was probably close to 30, maybe 40. So you're getting much more repetition and many, many more questions, and you're using more question words. This is very interesting. I just picked this up on Saturday at the conference. The AP for the College Board, and I know we don't teach AP here, AP Spanish, but they have changed their entire exam because of the idea of comprehensible input and fluency instead of grammar. And this is in your packet, but I was really interested to see how it said here that the AP language culture class takes a holistic approach. That was not the AP exam. The AP was a grammar-based exam. You either knew it or you didn't. That was it. Well, they've changed their tune, and this was just done in the fall of 2013. I thought this was particularly interesting. Language structures should be addressed in as much as they serve the communicative task and not as an end goal unto themselves. So in TPRS, if you need a direct object, use a direct object. Maybe it's not in the book until chapter 4, but you need it now. My kids are used to using them. I'm amazed. And then down here, this one I loved. It promotes both fluency and accuracy. It used to be accuracy. Now they're looking at fluency. So even the College Board is starting to recognize that we need to make a change. These are what my kids have said. On Friday, when we had the snow day, or the 2-hour delay, I asked them to give me some feedback that I could take to the conference on Saturday about what they think about TPRS. To be honest, I need to know. And these are some of the things that they said. I had students who said they struggled last year, could not speak, and now they're talking. One of the things that I've seen tremendously is the improving of writing, and then also in volunteering. I have hands go up constantly now. And it has nothing to do with me, it has to do with them. They're confident. They know the answers. They know what they're hearing. So they're not afraid to open their mouth because they know what's coming. I stole this from Julie over the weekend. I saw it yesterday and I went, oh, I have to have it. Tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember, involve me and I learn. TPRS is an involving teaching method. The kids are involved constantly. My largest class is 27, so yes, it's tough. The kids are in the back. I've got my desk all the way up here, all the way up here. They're right in front of me. And I'm constantly moving and looking at eyes and looking in faces. They're involved. They may not be writing, taking notes, doing work out of the textbook, but they are involved and they're on task because they're listening all the time. And I think that's made them be more involved. Additional resources. If you're interested in more about TPRS, I'm more than happy to share. But there is a group on Yahoo called More TPRS. If you are interested, they give all kinds of background information. They share stories, they share information. And it's not just TPRS that's in there. I found so many different things that you could use in any classroom, not just TPRS. It's worth joining the group. This one here, slideshare.net, is a wonderful resource. I can't open it here. I was just talking to Eleanor and Lori about it because it's, for whatever reason, it won't open. But on slideshare.net, you can actually look at Blaine Ray's presentations about TPRS. They're like 122 slides long. I took a little bit out of it, but you can look at the whole presentation as you have time. Ben Slavic is another language teacher who has a wonderful blog. He is awesome. He is awesome. He's just got some great materials. And then Laurie Clark, Hearts for Teaching. She is another TPRS person, and she is absolutely amazing. And Lori also prepared this that you can take a peek at. Lori prepared a new framework for Danielson, the Charlotte Danielson framework. She made one for foreign language. And it takes some time to go through, but it's really wonderful because it really focuses on what we do, not what the science department does or the math department does, it's what we do. And I've shared this with Aaron and with Brian Lynn and Mike. They've all gotten a copy of it. So whether they're using it or not, I don't know, but they've all been exposed to it. As you go through it, she has some wonderful, wonderful ideas. So, and then that's it. Thank you for your time.